All right. It's like just you and me right now, Keith.
Okay.
So how are things going?
Can't complain. Ready for the new year. Is it? Yeah. Little Guinness will help it along nicely.
We're gonna go slow and easy. We know in general 2020 hasn't been the greatest year for everybody, but how about you? Any good things from 2020?
I just feel really lucky that my job is one that weathered the whole thing relatively unscathed. So, and that I feel like I was blessed with that kind of situation. But otherwise, I know everybody's ready for something better to come along for the new year.
Oh yeah, I can't really complain. I think like most people, there's times I couldn't do anything. Like, try to write, I'd look at the computer and be like, I can't do it today. But two Kickstarters, and then we had a story with Planet Comics, so I really can't complain based on what the year actually was.
That's good.
I'll take.
You got this other thing. Oh, I like your shirt.
Thanks.
Using a Doc Savage. It's got the Doc Savage swoop going on there and stuff.
Yes, I'm bummed that they canceled Venture Brothers, but I get it. It takes so long to make each season that.
I gotta get back into it and finish it off. I've only watched like the first couple of seasons, I think.
So have you been following DC, like DC Comics? No. So
the only thing I read nowadays is Japanese manga. That's it.
Which will always blow my mind how they turn that around so quick. Like how those artists are turning that stuff around so freaking quickly.
Hey, One Piece is about Friday, Sunday is its 1000th chapter.
Jesus.
Yeah.
That's nuts.
And it's the same guy still doing it. It's not like U.S. comics where people will stick on, if they stuck on there for like a year, that was a long creative streak.
And it's not done like ahead of time, right? They do it as they go. Like it's each week they turn in whatever or.
Yeah, I've seen some of the manga strips. They go in and it look like they're half finished. It's like they got all the dialogue in there, but the artwork's a little sketchy. So I figure it'll be finished by the time they do the collected versions. But yeah, they got to meet their deadlines. And some of them go on hiatus for a long time if they're not feeling well or something happens where they can't do the work. So it's a nutty business over there. But I mean, I think most of those guys are looking to get a strip that's going to last a long time. It means job security, and they've got a whole studio. It's like I think One Piece has a big studio of guys that work with Oda to put the strip together. So they employ a lot of people. Nathan says he thinks he's on.
Yeah, I don't see him. Yeah, it blows me away. Like I didn't realize. I watched. Do you ever watch Comic Tropes on YouTube?
No, I haven't seen that.
Yeah, it's really good. Like he picks up the tropes of writers and stuff like that, and he's a big anime manga fan. And he talked about that, about how they turn this stuff around so quick. And I don't remember which one it was, but one of the titles he was looking at, and I guess like the guy wasn't finished, but they still submitted it. So like everything wasn't inked or everything wasn't done, but they still put it out. They were like, oh, it's still still got to go. So
yeah, I know Bleach, the strip Bleach went through it became very badly written, badly drawn. It just the guy was phoning it in, and I think he took a break and then finally finished it.
All right, let me try. Oh, let's see if I can find. So Nathan's backstage, but I don't see him yet.
Something's happening.
So it's saying that he is backstage, but I'm not. I don't see him yet. It's you and me. Try one more time real quick. So DC is they're going to their future state, so they're starting like everything is kind of new going into the new year.
Right.
So it's new writers. You know, they've cut back a bunch of the titles. So interesting. I mean, we'll see.
How do I post that I'm online on this thing?
Yeah, I don't know where. Like, I don't see Nathan yet. Usually, it pops up and like they're faded, and then I can bring them in, but I don't see him yet. Hopefully, we'll give him a second here.
Just trying to think about trying to post this on my. Post this on my timeline, so if people want to come in.
Yeah, for sure.
Trying to find.
There's Nathan. So now he's there.
All right.
Okay.
How's it going, Nathan?
Pretty good. How are you?
Good. So we were just talking. We got on to like manga and anime stuff, and just like how Keith and I, My Hero Academia, One Piece. Just talk about how those artists turn that stuff around so quick.
Oh, right.
So we kind of expect the same thing from you.
All right.
Yeah. Exactly. See, you got it. It's like at least one chapter a week.
Yes.
Yeah.
One book a week. That would be the thing. I was just saying that One Piece is going to have its 1,000th chapter this weekend.
Wow.
So that's why it's tough to get people into One Piece. They say, "Well, how much? It's like 1,000 chapters." Oh, well,
Right.
not really willing to make that kind of time investment. So
Right.
he's only been doing it for 20 years. I don't know
Yeah.
what their problem is.
Like when you see Naruto or whatever at the bookstore, it's like 5 shelves of the series all.
Yeah, we're fast approaching the 100th volume of One Piece.
Wow.
So,
So what do you guys think about conventions? You think we'll see them in 2021?
I don't know. Maybe late in the year. Maybe.
I've noticed everybody's starting to shift back. Like they were all trying for the end of this year, then they moved to like the beginning of next year, and then now they're like slowly creeping back into the further into the year, and they're completely pulled out of 2021.
Yeah.
So I was shocked because that's a big show.
I think it'll be depending on how well the vaccine is perceived to be working. So
Yeah. I personally just think that it's going to have to go back to small and then work their way back up. So back to the hotels, that type of thing, and controlling, how many people are in here. I don't know. I can't see a super big show. And but you guys in Texas are doing small shows. And I noticed Florida also is doing like those smaller type shows.
Yeah. Well, yeah, the lockdowns haven't been as severe out here in Texas or Florida. So
I don't know. I'm hoping. I've talked to some people that run shows, and they're like, "Oh no, we're going," and then MegaCon in Florida already has backup dates, so they're already. I think they're scheduled for like April, but their backup dates are like August. They've already said, these are our backup dates. If it doesn't work out, then here you go. So. So Nathan, I asked Keith, I was like, I know this has been a crap year, but there has to have been something good, right, in this year for you? Or no?
I don't know. It is. I did, I did finish off the year good because there was a lost, scared dog in the neighborhood without a collar, and I walked it around just like right before I came on for about half an hour and found its home. So
nice.
Kept it from running
well,
out.
that's a good thing.
Yeah. It was a big pit bull too. He was like bull mastiff or something. He must have been 100 pounds. But he was freaked out. But he ran up to me and wouldn't let me leave his sight. He was just he attached himself to me. So,
well, yeah, I found like little dogs running around dodging traffic and stuff like that, and picked them up and found out they had a collar on them that allowed me to call the owner who was out of town or something. So,
but your Kickstarter was this year, right, Nathan?
It was last year. It was right at the end of last year. Yeah.
I don't know. I thought it was the beginning.
Then I think I mailed them out at the mid-December, January is when I mailed them. So.
Yeah, I this year I guess just has like blended. I've been home so long. It's like I mean, remember what was what. I thought it was the beginning of the year, but it's funny. Like I talked to Jimmy Palmiotti about stuff, and like his trend is more going towards the Kickstarter route and the crowdfunding versus trying to pitch something to Marvel, DC, or whoever. So be interesting. I don't know like how stores would deal with that though. Like going forward, do you need to put something in your Kickstarter for stores where they can order, a high volume of books, or are they really going to take that risk on a book that is being kickstarted?
Right. I've seen it both ways, where they just either do it Kickstarter and then go through to stores to try to get it in there, or they have like the ordering, like the package, and you put an incentive in there they put incentives in with the, for the stores, like, hey, we'll do a special cover for you or something when you order so many books or something like that.
I didn't realize going into like Kickstarter what a pain it is for getting the printer, and if you're going to do variant covers, then there's an extra charge for that, and it's like oh
yeah,
you're the publisher, man.
Yeah.
It's tough because you got to find that balance of what do people want that you can afford to to do and still try to make a profit. So like, are you going to do T-shirts, or are you going to do, if you do prints, then you got to mail that thing, and like, who wants to, either got to roll it or, and then then you get the complaints from people. Well, my print came, ripped, or my print came, crinkled, and it's like, man. It's like, you have that collector's side of people, which I get because I'm the same way, but it's like, God, how do I do this without spending $300 for shipping to try to get all this stuff down?
Yeah.
My friend Bill Williams seems to have got the system down well for like his Punchline book, because what he's done there is made Punchline work as a Kickstarter, and then he got Antarctic to pick it up as a book, so it gets comic book store distribution, as well as fulfilling it. The creation of the book itself is fulfilled by the Kickstarter. So. he seems to have the system down where it works pretty well for him.
And that seems to be a good way too, because like once they see your Kickstarter successful, they're more willing to pick up your book. So
yeah, and I think the main thing about Kickstarter is that all the money is coming your way rather than being filtered through the middlemen to get to the comic shops.
yeah,
And so that way it makes it viable for you to pay your artists and pay for your printing and things like that. You're not going to make a lot of money, I don't think, unless you're a really successful creative Kickstarter.
Unless you're doing like the Brian Polito $100,000, whatever. Or
oh yeah,
Exactly.
I get it. There's people like that, and people want the boob books, but I'd rather tell a good story with cool characters and stuff than. But I get it, man. To each their own. If that's that's where he's making his money, man. I don't blame him for continuing it. But yeah. So have you watched what's going on with DC, Nathan, or no? I talked to Keith a little bit about it with Future State, like how the characters are changing, and they've reduced titles, and it's a lot of new writers.
No, I haven't seen anything. Like I've seen a little bit on Twitter, but I don't really follow it. Like I follow a few artists, but people will be like, they're outraged, and I'm like, I don't even know what you're talking about. Like, and I'm not going to try to research, hours of posts to try to find out.
What are you reading, Nathan? That's why we got into Japanese comics, because that's all I read. So
He's reading those novellas.
I haven't read a lot like this year. I've been kind of in my bunker. Like I haven't really left much or done much shopping or anything. So I haven't read much of anything this year. So
well, that's one thing you asked me about the year. It's like I've been back at the office since like June. So I've been out and about and commuting to work every day, and this just felt pretty normal to me. But like I said, I'm one of the lucky ones. I had a job that did not go away or didn't go on hiatus, and I got to get out of the house. So
yeah,
enjoy it. Mine was I shifted to working from home, and then it's forget it, man. It's like wake up, we switch from my sleeping sweatpants to my day sweatpants. Come out the office. Have my work laptop here, my regular laptop there. It's pretty bad.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's crazy. Yeah, we our Jemmy we were working from home for like when the main lockdown happened.
Yeah.
And then in June when they started relaxing things a little bit, that's when we came back in. We have to get our temperature shaken every day. Every time we walk in, basically, I just check it anyway, just for fun. Because we have a little robot, a little stand thing there. You put your head up to it. It goes, normal temperature. Please proceed. Or if you forget your mask for whatever the reason, it says, please wear a mask as well. So
you guys really need to Doctor Who that and be like, if you have a temperature, be like, terminate.
Oh, listen, if you have a high temperature, a klaxon thing goes off.
Oh,
that happened to me one day. It was a very hot day out. I came in, I was a little overheated from walking through the sun and stuff like that. It started going high temperature. It's like it got crazy. It's like it's nuts. So you don't want to set it off in the wrong way.
Yeah,
it was kind of fun.
You guys build everything there too, or no? Or is it just the design side where you're at, and then they have a factory that?
No, we do all the concepting and design there at the office, and then it's usually sampled and created in China.
Mm.
And then they send the stuff back, and we get to say, no, that's not at all what I drew. Try it again. No, they're usually not that bad, but when you're dealing with air blowns, you kind of draw the artwork with an eye towards, well, how are they going to interpret this in China? So I know what the kind of thing they're going to do. So I'm not as disappointed as I was when I first started working for them. I do these drawings and it would come out looking like an air blown. So
did things slow down because of COVID coming from China, or no?
No.
No. Wow.
we had a really good year. The business had a really good year because people were out there wanting to do something, decorate their yards, do something to help keep Christmas going because the year was not cooperating. So it worked out well for us. Like I said, we feel very lucky that we had this kind of a year. So.
Yeah, I know. Like here in the beginning, everybody was trying to fix their backyards. Like before the fall, there's like, oh, let's get stuff out here, the fire pit and all this other stuff. And then here, they had this thing where they were having to go to like Lowe's and Home Depot and tell the older people not to hang out and talk in the flower area outside because they would all just congregate there. Like, oh, such and such is here too. Oh, what are you doing? Oh, I'm going to put this in the backyard. Oh, nice. I'm going to do this too. And then, it just didn't end. They would keep going. And then someone had to be like, you got to go. I'm sorry. Can't stick around. Never going on. So,
yeah.
But, so since you've been in the industry for a while, Keith, any big changes that you notice from your time going up till now, other than like AT&T buying DC and that kind of stuff?
I was talking to an old friend of mine that I worked with up at DC, and we both kind of agree that we got in on the very tail end of the good part, the really cool part of the DC era, because that was back when Watchmen had just run, and we had Dark Knight stuff was finishing up, and The Killing Joke was out, and all those other things, and the industry hadn't quite taken off in its total collector's mode yet. And because I think the Death of Superman thing was probably the culmination of all that attitude about multiple covers, bagged books, extra cards, trading cards inside, that kind of thing. And that's what initially caused the implosion. Remember?
Yeah.
People thought they were going to put their kids through college with the Death of Superman book. No, we printed a bunch of those. So no, it was because I was right there. I think the first multiple cover book ever was Legends of the Dark Knight #1, because we did a false cover with 5 different PMS Dayglow colors.
Yeah, and I remember being with a pack, right? There's all that stuff with it, the Arkham pop up and the little the map.
No, that was later.
Oh, okay.
This was they were just experimenting with putting multiple covers on the same book. And so they decided to do an overcover for the cover. The covers were all the same, but there was an overcover that had a different Dayglow PMS color accent. And so they had me choosing the colors and stuff. I remember one of my first jobs at DC was picking new PMS colors for the subsequent Killing Joke editions. So as you could tell what printing it was or whatever. Or that it was a different printing. So I was there. We were in the marketing group, and a lot of people opposed doing the multiple covers. I remember that. I wasn't real wild about it myself because it meant a lot more work for us. But I think that's when it started snowballing at that point, when they realized people would buy one of each.
Yeah.
Some people. You can fool some of the people. Most of the time, that's just enough for a comic book company to make a living. So. Or a lawyer.
Did you guys have I always hear those Marvel stories about back in the day, all these pages were just sitting at the reception area or whatever, and people now people are like, oh, I wish I would have grabbed this, I wish I would have grabbed that, because these Avengers pages or whatever were just sitting here in this area, and nobody was paying any attention to them.
Now, when I was there, DC always had a little bit more corporate feel to it than Marvel did. Marvel had a little looser, but when you walked into DC, you had this receptionist. What was her name? She was a really nice lady. Yeah. But we also had a mannequin of Clark Kent sitting on the couch reading the paper. And you had to wait in there, and they phone you in. They find out if you say, I'm here to see, so-and-so, and they say, okay, and she call and send you on through or whatever. So I remember coming in, and Dana Carvey, they were doing the 50th anniversary of a Superman TV special. And I walked in to go to work, and Dana Carvey was in there with some guy with camera crew, and they were doing some stuff with that mannequin for the special. So it was a really interesting job to have. You know, you go in there and Adam West is walking through the office. Mark Hamill's hanging around out there somewhere. We had Lucy Lang from the Superboy TV series back in the 80s. What's her name? I'm blanking on her name. But she came up to the office. Really nice girl. Really, you know, so you got some perks. I got perks just living in New York City. You know, just living in New York City itself is a perk in itself. So,
what part of the city were you in?
I lived on the Upper East Side of Manhattan.
No, that's where I went. Like I grew up in Ithaca, and then I moved to the city. I was on East 88th Street.
I was on 86th and First.
Yeah, I was, because once you get into the high 80s, you're starting to get close to the out of bounds. But yeah, but it was still a decent neighborhood.
Yeah, 86th and First was a really good area. There was a great Greek cafe. You know, every other corner had a Greek cafe on it.
Yeah.
So I had my own Greek cafe. The guy would wave at me if I stopped or not as I was going by on the way to the subway. Long walks to the subway though, because you know you had the short, you know, the avenues are going the long way and the streets were going the short way, and so you had to walk up long blocks to get to the subway.
Yeah.
Between avenues, there was a big space between the main avenues.
I'll never forget my first apartment there, 5th floor walk up, and
what? How many floors?
Like, you know, 5th.
Oh, 5th floor.
I was on the 5th. It wasn't super bad, but it was a walk. So, and the stairwell was narrow enough that, you know, only one of us could. If someone was coming down and I was going up, one of us had to either go, you know, one way or the other to lift the other. And I had to buy all the furniture that came with the room because, you know, there was no way like I was gonna be able to get furniture up there. So
mine was a 4th floor walk up.
yeah.
And it was owned by Bob Budiansky at Marvel. And that's kind of how I got it with my friend Janet Jackson, not the Janet Jackson, JJ Jackson, called me up and said, hey, you want to move up here? Bob Budiansky's got an apartment. And I could have gotten it for $50 less if I'd taken it sight unseen. But I said, I kind of want to look at it. I just want to come up and take a look. The neighborhood was great. I thought, okay.
Was the $50 worth it?
Yeah, but actually, after the first, you know, after a little while, he actually dropped the rent down to $700 a month, which is what I was paying for a 15 by 20 foot room.
Yeah, I had a studio, so yeah, mine was you walk in, bed's over here, the couch is here, TV's here, kitchen's here, bathroom's there. That was it.
Yep. First thing I bought was a window unit for the so.
Definitely.
Which are a pain to take up to the 4th floor.
Oof.
Yeah.
I don't know how people. I mean, it was cool at the time. It was a good experience, but like now, you know, when I think about it, I'm like, oh man, I don't know how people that still live there do this stuff because.
I really look fondly back on those 4 years I spent in New York working for DC and Marvel and all the other guys. So, that was, like I said, I think I came in on the very tail end of what would be considered the what would be the end of the Bronze Age.
Mm.
You know, their last great age of comics, I think, before they went totally corporate and bonkers. Now we get rumors of DC being shut down completely, and
it's I mean, to me, it's interesting because I mean, I see it, but you know, to me, it's like, did AT&T buy it with the thought that eventually we're going to dump this because we don't want to publish stuff, but it comes with Warner Brothers, so you know, it's one of those, we got to take everything. You know, if we buy this, then we get all of this, but you know, publishing's not really our game, so maybe we should drop that piece of it.
Well, I don't think they know exactly what the comic book company's function is nowadays, which is basically to be a testing ground for film production. I don't know.
Yeah. probably wanted the properties more than anything.
That's always been the cool thing about comics. If you do it, just sit down and do your own story. You don't have to have like a huge production to get a really cool sci-fi or superhero story out the door. So,
yeah.
And then when they do it and they make that's where the big money is, of course. That's what they're looking for.
Yeah.
Someone to license it or option it, whatever.
Yeah, that's great. Like this year in general has just been interesting to me, like comic wise, with the whole, DC pulling out of Diamond, and then going with these other two distributors who are actually, one of them is Midtown. So it's like, in my mind, like how is that not a conflict of interest with other shops? Like if their DC did some kind of, limited cover or some kind of promotion. Midtown is your distributor, and they're also a comic shop. So how does that, how does that not become some kind of a conflict?
Yeah.
Guess that's up to Midtown, hey?
I was shocked to see them take on like that kind of, because I mean that was like the cool thing when I lived in the city. Midtown was like the first place I wanted to go, and then again they have the narrow stairwell going up. So.
Did you ever go to St. Mark's Comics?
I did. I think I hit majority of the shops, and I ended up living before I left. I lived out in Queens in Astoria, and there was a shop in one of the stops going out there. It was kind of cool. It was like one of those older, which as a comic person, it's cool to go in these older places like that. You see like the nostalgic stuff, comics and knickknacks and statues and stuff like that. So it's kind of cool to see that. But I think I tried to hit the majority of shops when I was in New York. Yep. You ever been to Midtown, Nathan?
I have not. I haven't been to New York at all.
It's cool. I mean, but it's got that touristy kind of kitschy. I mean, there's multiple ones now, but like back, when I was there, you had to go to Times Square, and that was, the big one, and you couldn't miss it because it's right there on the corner, and they've got all the cool stuff in the windows on the second floor, and you go in and they have the life size, Spider-Man and
right
stories when you go inside. It was cool, but it was funny because there was always this guy selling, like one of the bootleggers selling like regular comics from his cart, like right outside of Midtown. So, like maybe $1 cheaper, 50 cents cheaper.
Yeah.
I do miss that about the city. Usually it was the Asian people that had the bootleg DVDs, and they'd have the little blanket or tarp set out and all the DVDs. And something that came out in the theater, you'd buy it all excitedly. I'd go home and watch it, and you'd hear people talking, and someone would get up and walk in front of their camera.
Yeah.
But it's one of those things, I guess, when you're in the city that it's there, so you got to try it and
right.
lesson. It's like $5, whatever. It's okay. But it's good. I mean, I'm interesting. It's interesting to me to see like where comics is going to go. I don't think it's going to die. Like all these people saying, "Oh, it's the end this time." It's not going to come back. I think it's always going to. There's always going to be those people that want to read, comics, and they like the art and the storytelling. So.
It's been dying since the late 90s, so it's like it's like there's always the naysayers have always been like,
yeah, after the implosion in the 90s, they thought, comics are done for.
Yeah.
No, they just kind of went back to their roots.
Yeah.
The overinflated numbers and the huge amounts people were making off of royalties and things just kind of went away.
Yeah.
Back to the way it was before that. I think they really started notice. I guess it was back when McFarlane and company were starting to show some real profit from the royalties because of the book number of, they were getting it for the number of books they were selling. And those numbers at that time were pretty overinflated. It's really weird.
Yeah, I don't, it's I mean it's interesting to me. I think that there's things out there that that they really need to happen, or to be out there for people. Like I've always wanted to do like an anthology book where you open it up to people trying to break in, or people that have done the Kickstarter stuff, so they're familiar with like how to do a comic, but to try to get more eyes on those people, because a lot of the times it just seems like it's the same person writing 6 titles for Marvel or 6 titles for DC, and it's like there's so many cool ideas out there, concepts, and people that are writing. And now it seems like when DC does these talent searches, they always pull people that are like good in another field, or like this person has written a bunch of novels that were popular, so let's bring them over, instead of trying to find like someone that truly is a fan of comics, or that knows the history of DC comics and could write a good story and bring back some pieces maybe from DC history and put it in the story.
I was just signing up for StreamYard. Sorry.
Oh,
But yeah, that's just me. Like I don't think there's really not like an avenue, because now it's like all the people that are writing for Marvel and DC will jump to Image and be like, well, I've got a creator-owned book I want to do now, and it's like it's cool, and they're usually good, but it's like now you're flooding the market because you're writing Batman, you're writing something else, and then now you're doing something for Image too, which may take Image's eyes away from somebody new coming in, because like, oh well, let's get this from this person because we know people really like them. And I get it, you need to sell your books, but there should be somebody should come up with an outlet or something to bring try to bring in new talent.
yeah.
The tough part is that kind of format's a tough sell. I mean, it's not very profitable to do anthology books.
Yeah.
It's not like back in the day. Even anthology books like Creepy and Eerie had a stable of people they used on a regular basis.
Yeah.
There wasn't a whole lot of new people breaking into the business that way, but a lot of the good guys did work for them, or broke into it that way.
Yeah.
So it's just a question of trying to come up with a format that you can market these new up and comers through without expecting to make a lot of money off of it, I guess.
Yeah. Well, my other thought too was that then you pair somebody. So like, you take maybe a new writer and pair them with a veteran artist, so that way you have the selling appeal of it. Hopefully for the artist, hopefully the writer gets some takeaways from that veteran artist on if they're doing hey, this is what I've seen other people do, or maybe this would make your story better. I know, like for the Hero Initiative anthology they're working on, like I submitted my script to Phil Hester, and he liked it, and he came back and just gave me like a couple small tips on hey, well, you should try this or do it this way, just because from experience I know that this may work better. But then it's you've got to find those veteran people that are willing to do that and would want to not necessarily mentor, but just do like a 5-6 page short or something of story, and then kind of work with that person on making it better.
Oh, that was the best thing about working for DC, is I got to rub shoulders with Dick Giordano and Joe Rubenstein and a lot of people that are really, really good at what they do. And so some of that would rub off on me, or I get to sit and look over their shoulder while they're doing something, or Dick would call me into his office to yell at me about my Power of the Atom Inks, whatever. I learned something from all that. I think somebody asked them to yell at me.
Yeah.
Pretty sure.
You sure you yell at this guy when you talk to him about
Exactly. So but I appreciated all that, considering that really it only been working for like Kamiko, or other offshoot brands. And working for DC was a dream come true at the time.
So, speaking of that, like, do you follow on Twitter the guy from Kamiko that's now like terrific?
No, he's a pretender to the throne. He's
Well, yeah,
he's not a real comic book producer.
he's already out for not paying people, and some contract dispute and stuff. Like, in the contracts, they were trying to get newer people that wouldn't know as much, and telling them that they wouldn't get paid until whenever, that their original art could be up for sale by the company, that that it was theirs, and it just, every time the guy posts, it's like it turns into a nightmare. Have you seen it? That I think it's like Terrific Productions or.
Yeah, no, I've seen it a little bit because I know Willingham has stories about him in the Elementals.
Well, he has the Lightfeld's property,
right?
Yeah. So that's the other big thing. I guess like Rob sold it back in the day, and.
But did he sell it to that guy? Or did he sell it to somebody else and he got the property?
He sold it to somebody else, and then that guy bought it from the third party.
Yeah, I think if you look at the guy, is a terrible businessman because he totally drove Kamiko into the ground. But here he's sitting on like something like the Elementals, which is a very viable strip if they wanted to bring it back. It's just a question of actually doing it. I know Willingham would probably really like to have it back, but there's no chance of that happening. So, because then he could have some fun again, because he was having a good time with that back in the day.
It's crazy to me, some of that stuff, like where they sold it, or the guy in Florida that did the cross-gen.
Yeah.
No? Wasn't it cross-gen?
Yeah, cross-gen.
Where he had like they lived there or whatever, and worked while they were, yeah. I don't know. That's like a little weird to me, to be like, welcome to the compound.
I think if you look back at a lot of the places like Kamiko or CrossGen, I think there were that kind of they were kind of trying to do the Marvel thing. I think the reason Marvel was so appealing back in the 60s and 70s was that they made it, at least Stan made it sound like it was a big family of people that just kind of all hung out together and created comics and had a good time. And that's kind of the thing. I can remember the days I worked for Kamiko, that it was like that. You go up there to Philadelphia and hang out and have a good time, and we were all friends, and it was a good thing. And then when you get to DC, it's like I said, I don't think it's quite the same anymore. Everybody's working remotely. Now we're working remotely by force, but you don't have to live in New York. And I realized when I moved to New York, that's what really made me catapulted me into the industry, was actually being there and being able to talk to the people and get in front of them and stuff like that. It's just not the same anymore.
Yeah. It also just, it seems like anybody could really become a publisher now and publish, their stuff into like, or become like, I guess my example I should say is that, so there's a new publisher that was a group of people that broke off from doing work for AP. And so the writer, the artist, I don't know if it's their letterer or not, or the colorist, but they basically broke off and they created their own publishing name, and they've gotten into Diamond, which I had always thought, that'd be a tough task to get into Diamond as a publisher, but I guess not. And so like, they're doing their books, and publishing them through Diamond, but I also noticed that they probably didn't bring like editors and stuff with them because the synopsis stuff for the stories is really bad. The grammar's really bad. The punctuation is like off. It's and Diamond like kind of ran that. So I don't know.
Diamond has no editors either.
I guess if you want to be a publisher now, you can do that. But I'd always thought Diamond had like a stricter type of thing, where they wouldn't just take anything that that you'd have to be like, hey, I'm a publisher. We have at least X amount of titles coming out this year. So.
Well, they probably relaxed it a bit considering the business environment right now. But
yeah, that's true.
But yeah, after at a certain point, it's like not profitable for them to even handle your book if you're not selling enough copies.
That was my thought. Was like, how are you really selling that many books to shops and stuff? Because there's no veteran creators on the books. Like I said, there's typos and stuff in the actual description. I mean, I don't know. To me, if you saw that as like a Kickstarter, it may make you wane on it and be like, what's the book going to be like if the description is this bad? What is the book actually going to look like?
Yeah. It's tough. I mean, that's the beauty of it too. On the other hand, that's the beauty of it. You can go be your own publisher.
Yeah.
It's getting easier to do that, even though we don't really want to see a lot of the stuff people want to publish. But
yeah. I know, like with my Kickstarters, like I took, the book to shops, and did the, hit the streets and said, hey, you know what? We did this book. It's one of 4. Take this copy and take a look at it, and pitch my stuff. And I got lucky enough that I think there's like 8 shops that carry it. So I can't complain about that. But I had to hit the streets. I had to go out and actually talk to these people and say, this is why you should carry this. Give them some kind of incentive on what they, why they should. And it definitely, isn't making me millions. When they want to, split it, 60-40 or, some, 50-50 for the book on, and then, then what am I going to market at? I can't really go above $4 because that's really the going rate right now for comics. So,
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
I think that's why I think I prefer seeing people trying to kickstart like a complete graphic novel rather than an issue of a book.
Yeah.
It makes more sense to me if you can say, yeah, I got the whole damn thing here. When you buy this, you're going to read the whole story. No waiting for anything else.
I mean, it's tough though, because then you got to look at the time for that. But TKO, does that where you can buy, the 4 issues, or you can buy the trade paperback. They both come out at the same time. So
That's interesting.
yeah, I think it's good, to give them that, opportunity or that chance, to buy them like that. And then Bad Idea, I think, drops their titles in January, and that's Dinesh, who was the head of Valiant the last few years, and brought back, the Bloodshot movie and all of that. He's got some stuff coming out, and they actually shipped a book to shops and said, here's this book, and they gave it like a fake name and a fake publisher name, and said, if you're interested, you can get more by doing this. And like not a ton of shops did it, but now like that book, because of that collector feel for comics, is like $500-600 because they sent it, and then once people realized what it was, they couldn't get it because they'd only sent out a limited number. And if you didn't order that, then your shop may have gotten one, and they only picked like 30 or some odd number of shops to get this stuff.
Which brings up another problem, is that like there's no way for the initial publisher to realize any kind of real profit out of those inflated prices for their collectible comics. It's just like artists selling their artwork, and then later it sells for millions of dollars, but the artist isn't going to see any of that money.
Yeah.
unless the person who buys it says, "Oh, I should send 10% of this to Mike Zek."
How often does that happen?
Yeah, never. So
All right.
I think like
I think
Jim
the auction
Hanna
houses. Go ahead. I'm sorry, Nathan.
oh yeah, when he was putting his last book out, he was talking about he was going to do it all as a graphic novel, and everybody Marat and like everybody working was like, no, put it out as single issues because you can add the promos to it, you can make more off the single issues, it'll come out faster, and then you do the graphic like afterwards, but initially put it out as single issues. So on Kickstarter.
Well, there's that. I mean, if the Kickstarter individual issues are padded with good extras and bells and whistles, and makes it cool to buy it, and then the graphic novel will be gravy because everything will be paid for already.
Right.
So all the separations and art and everything else, it's all done. It's just put out a collected version.
Yeah.
And that's what you get in the bookstores. So, I mean, there's a real sense of logic to the whole thing. It's just a question of being able to manipulate it properly, be able to do it.
Yeah.
Way. So,
and the bookstore, that's a whole nother monster in itself, dealing with publishing on that, because if that doesn't sell, they return them and you have to give them their money back on the.
Yep. It's not a fun business to crack. No. Bookstore distribution. No.
Yeah, I don't know. These comics, man, are gonna break your heart, just like Kirby said.
You have to do it because you love it. So it's.
Well, I mean, that has a lot to do with it.
I love seeing the concept being brought to life. The idea and hashing that idea with people, and coming up with something better, and then seeing it. Somebody draws it, and that piece of it. Like, I can read digital comics. I'm just not a fan because I don't know. It's not the same to me. I get it, the convenience piece, but I'm also not like those old guys like sniffing the pages of the books and stuff like that.
Oh,
you don't know until you sniff the inside of a '70s Spider-Man book what you got.
There's something about newsprint and ink that.
Yeah, I'm not getting high off Spider-Man books, right? But then it's also like, well, you can smell it, but then don't rub your nose because then the oil from your skin will get on that page and it's gonna ruin that.
Right.
So there's instructions as well as doing that, but
it's so weird because that's all. If I buy comics or whatever, it's like I'm going for the old stuff. I'm not buying any of the new stuff. It doesn't really interest me. Mainly because I feel like back in the day, back in the 60s and 70s, you felt like you were like keeping up with the continuity. Now continuity is kind of out the window. If something's starting to bottom out, they reboot it or start a new line of comics like DC or whatever. It's like, what's the point?
Yeah.
That's what made like Crisis on Infinite Earths interesting, because they got so fragmented. They figured they had to consolidate. So let's do an event. I think that's between that and Secret Wars. That's why we have so many events.
Yeah.
I couldn't I don't know. The events were cool, but I just you get suckered into buying like all these issues, and then nothing that took place in Aquaman really had anything to do with the other story. Like, this was what happened to Aquaman during Crisis, but it was listed as number 1 or number 7 of 12 for Crisis, and then I was that sucker, and I'm like, well, this book had nothing to do with the story, but
yeah. When I was working at DC, they had the 3 Superman titles going, and so they got the brilliant idea that they're just going to make it one long continuity between the 3 books, and so they started putting additional numbering on the books, a little Superman shield type thing to tell you what order these books are supposed to be read in, as this arc continues on. So, you know, so between the 3 books, yeah, they're supposed to be read in a certain order.
Yeah. I just, I don't know.
Or like Inferno, the big one. Like, remember Inferno, where it was like it had like 12 titles, and then it's like every other title had like the Inferno thing, and there was like maybe a page that like sort of connected to the story. Like,
no, back in the when I was reading the Spider-Man books and things like that, it was great because people would characters would cross over and it would be really cool and special. And now it's just everybody's doing it
oh yeah,
ad nauseum. Or else they'd have a cameo, Thor flying by during a Spider-Man comic or Daredevil. I think it was Daredevil swinging around and Thor goes hurtling through. Oh, wonder where he's going. And that was it for Thor, that issue. Thank you very much.
So, were there anybody that like came up in your time at DC, Keith, that like you maybe not surprised by, but that that maybe moved up and into higher ranks than you would have expected, like artist or writer wise?
No, well, I mean, when I got there, Mike Mignola was just beginning his ascent into where he is now, and yeah, I mean, there were so many guys that were like that. Were going to be long-term successes, long-term talents. Plus, we were working with some of the old school guys like Mike Zack, Mike Golden, people like that were doing covers for us and things like that. So Walt Simonson was in the office all the time, and that was like meeting I'd met him years ago before that at a convention, and he was like the first pro I ever spoke to, and he was really nice and encouraged me to send my stuff to DC and stuff like that, or Marvel, one of the two, I forget. So it was really interesting because it puts a different perspective on it, because most of the time they're just there to pick up their check. Not like nothing really special. It's a business and they're doing their thing. So I just feel really lucky that I got to experience that the way I did. Just, I don't think you could ever do that again. It just doesn't, unless it's like Marvel, since they're still in New York and still have their offices there. Maybe, I don't know. I think DC's a harder nut to crack nowadays.
Yeah. It's interesting. Like, to me, like I've watched all these videos and interviews with Mignola, and it's just it's funny to me that like he talks about with Hellboy, he knew what he's going to do, and he knew that he was going to. He talked to Dark Horse, and they just said, whatever you want to do, you can bring it and do it. And he did, and it was just like funny to me to go back and look at his DC stuff, because he draws the same style. Like, all his characters have that same style to them. And to me, like, I liked it, but I know like a lot of people that were just like, that's not my Superman, that's not my Batman, and they don't look like that. It shouldn't be like that. But to me, it was like, it's cool. It's cool to have a different take on Superman, or a different take on these heroes. They don't always have to look perfect, but
yeah. Well, now it seems like most of them have to look like Jim Lee, or they don't go anywhere. So
yeah, well, but it's the same thing. Like, to me, it's that same thing as there's certain artists that are doing multiple books and with Marvel and DC, and it's like that's the look that they're looking for. But I don't know, like I think variety is better. Like, it'd be cooler to have different takes on these these heroes and their appearances and stuff like that than to have one person doing all this stuff. And Walt is super nice. Like, I've met him I think twice at conventions, and he and Weezy are both super nice. Like, they always sign everything. They'll talk to you about stuff, which is cool. They don't do a ton of shows anymore, but
yeah, well, they're great people.
Roger Stern does my hometown show in Ithaca every year because he lives there, and the guy's super nice. I'll talk to you about anything, but He's one of the writers that I've always really liked because he had that sensational, that Spider-Man run was amazing. His Superman stuff was great. Did you ever meet him in your time at DC or no?
Stern? No, never met Stern. Most of the others, though, back during those Superman days, those crazy Superman days. Terry Gamble is a good friend of mine, and he lives here in Fort Worth. We hang out all the time. I've known him for like 30 years, 40 years, something like that. I forget. But I'm the one that helped bring him over into DC because I knew he wanted to draw Superman. And I said, hey, we should get him. He was still doing Marvel Team Up, I think.
Mm-hmm.
And so we should get him to start doing some covers or something. And that's when it started. They figured out he could work on Superman. So.
And did Marvel hate you after that? This guy's stealing our talent. Don't let him in the.
No, I don't think. Marvel never really knew who the hell I was, so it didn't get in their way. I mean, no, I better not get into that. Okay, that's a story for another time.
Yeah, I mean, I'm like that stuff, but I missed it, and it's always cooler to me, like the older stuff, because you see these stuff, the stuff where these guys had to break in, like Carey doing Marvel Team Up, and when they started though, they didn't do like regular work. It was like fill-in work or stuff like that, and just to me, it's like I don't know. I like seeing that stuff. I like seeing that that they had to do this to get to here and to get to there. Whereas like nowadays, it's just kind of like this person's on Spider-Man, and they've done nothing before, or maybe very little before, but now they're on a mainstream book. Whereas before it's you really had to get there. Like it wasn't you weren't just thrown on to like John Byrne. You weren't just thrown onto Fantastic Four. He has this lengthy resume of work that he's done before he got there.
Well, I mean, part of that's got to be just because of the nature of the business nowadays. But back then, we had a much smaller talent pool. It was a lot harder to. You had to like go to New York to actually break in. Now you can just send your stuff in, and people, hey, it's great, and everything's telecommuted.
Yeah. I think with Kickstarter and like self-publishing now, they see that you've done stuff prior. You don't have to work you don't have to be the low guy on the totem. You're already a set commodity when they pick you up. So
absolutely. Yeah, there's lots of ways to prove yourself now, as opposed to back in the day we had to show your portfolio and get a break and get published.
Yeah. And I don't think today they're not as willing to go with just unknowns that are completely like off the street and tell you've done something. So
very true. I
love those old stories, like the Frank Miller going and bugging Neil Adams, and Adams saying, "Go pump gas, go back and pump gas in Vermont. You're no good. You're no good." And keeps with it, keeps coming back. And he's another one, not everybody loves his style, but, guy can tell some stories. But I love hearing like those, those stories like that, where it's, he didn't get it right off the bat, and he kept going and coming back and doing this and doing that. And that's got him where he needed to be.
And then they gave him a book that was being canceled, and the rest is history.
Yeah.
Did you ever meet Frank when you were in DC?
No, Frank didn't come into the office. I did have a conversation with David Lloyd, who did V for Vendetta. DC was reprinting that book. And have I told you this story?
I don't think so.
But it's like, I had seen the chromalin proofs for it. It had the very nice pastel watercolor colors by David over his black and the original strip was in black and white in Warrior magazine, and so the first issue came out, and my boss was off in San Diego for the con, So I was holding down the fort at DC, and I get this call from David Lloyd. He's really irate about how saturated the color is on this book. So apparently, whoever went up to press check the book had decided that there was not enough color on the page and then flooded the press. So I said, "Oh, I know exactly what you mean. I saw the chromalin proofs. Yeah, the colors are totally not right." I said, "I promise you, I will go up and press check the second issue and make sure it's done right." And so I went up and definitely we did it right, and he was happy with that. But the press people, I went up and did a lot of press checking. So between me and this other guy, if they saw him coming, they started flooding the presses. If they saw me coming, they started dialing down the ink. You knew I wasn't interested in flooding that much color on the page. Especially with, at the time, we were starting to get into more and more 4-color process painted books and things like that, like V for Vendetta. So it's a much different beast than the regular old comic book stuff.
So do you have like one specific highlight from your time at DC?
No, I made some really good friends. I still one of the guys I worked with, I'm still really good friends with, and I just it's really hard to nail that down because there was such a. I realize now what kind of a semi-magical time it was in my life, working up there in New York City and at DC Comics, and now, I mean, it's just like a really pleasant memory. Because as soon as I moved away back to Texas and stuff, that's when you start losing any kind of gigs you had with the comic book people, and you start looking for other work. So that's why I went into animation and now air-blown design. So.
Well, you had me beat. My job was I did sales forecasting for Estee Lauder at the Estee Lauder corporate offices, and not the highlight, but one of the things I remember is they did a Trump cologne, and it was like in a gold thing. We had to take it over the Trump Tower, and that was like the freaking worst. Like, and this is way back then, it was just the worst to go in that place and take stuff up, and they kept wanting more and more free product. It was like, oh my god, forget it. But it was cool. Like the thing I liked about living in the city was that there was always something to do. You could get on the subway, and anywhere in that city, there's always something going on. There's a concert or something. You could get on the subway. 15 minutes, you're there. You could do it. Get on the subway. 15 minutes, you're home. That was the greatest thing to me.
Yeah, just don't ride the subways after midnight.
Yeah, I saw some interesting things on there at night between drunks and just random craziness, but it was the greatest thing to me, living there. Then we would get bigger conventions there. Wizard World was like in their prime back then, so we'd go to Wizard World Philly, and Marvel DC had booths there. It was like it was the coolest thing to go to. And now Wizard is a shell of what it used to be. But the conventions, to me, it seems like you have to have something else in the company that owns it needs to be doing something else as well to put on good shows, to have the money to bring in guests and stuff like that.
Yeah, now it's become a media.
Yeah.
Media thing as opposed to the comic book thing. So we convinced you to go live in New York City for a while, Nathan?
I don't know. I've always wanted to visit there, so
you wouldn't want to go live in it right now, I don't think.
Yeah.
No. I'm definitely a West Coast. I like the West Coast. Like if I could, San Diego would be my place to live. So
that's a nice place.
Yeah.
When I was living in New York City, I was right on the cusp of the Giuliani era.
Yeah.
I voted in the first attempt to become mayor, and David Dinkins won. Mm-hmm. David Dinkins didn't do a very good job, and then Giuliani won the one after I left. So, but I remember coming out of my apartment to go to work, and Giuliani was on the corner like kissing a baby or something. He lived in my general neighborhood. He voted in my precinct where I voted for him. So it was crazy.
You ever been to San Diego Comic-Con? Either one of you guys?
Oh yeah, I've been lots.
No, yeah.
This year would have been my year to go because I got a pro badge for being published through EP. Aaron Campbell was going to get a hotel room through DC, so we would have been right across from the convention center. And then, of course, COVID.
Oh.
Yeah, we'll get back going again. I'd have to totally revet myself with them as far as being able to get into the show. And even then, it's just really hyper expensive just to go.
Yeah, 2009 is the last year I went, and that was, I mean, it was big then. And 2010 was when they started doing the lottery, like when the hotel rooms were like so booked you couldn't get anything. Like,
yeah.
But I went from 97 to 2009. So
wow.
Did you table or no? Did you go just as a?
No, I just went, like we had printed some stuff, like Jim and I had printed a book together and stuff. So we had our pro badges. So we were always like walking around with our pro badges. So it's like off of one self-published little book that we had done. But so we always got in free, but it was like, you know, trying to go in the lines, like just showing portfolios and trying to get work back then, you know. So
yeah. I went in 1 year. One year I went in my capacity as an art director at DC. That was a lot of fun. Got to look at at portfolios and things like that. But
yeah,
did a lot of cons actually. So, the best thing in New York was at Christmas time, because I'm a Texas guy, right?
Yeah.
Hardly ever see snow. You get to see a lot of snow when you live in New York City.
Oh yeah.
Yeah. So and every time they did that, it would be like a ghost town at DC because people were coming in from Jersey or Connecticut and they couldn't get in on the trains. So we were those of us that lived in the city were expected to be in the office to hold down the fort. While everybody else was working from home was kind of a misnomer because nobody was working from home back then. It was
right.
like they could log in or anything. Like again, when I was there, it was just like on the cusp of computers taking over the comic book world, you know, as far as coloring and lettering and stuff go.
Right.
It was just beginning at that time. If I'd known it was going to really take off like that, I would have stuck around a little bit longer. Just because computers are so much fun.
Yeah.
So I thought with San Diego now, it's like you have to have something published every so many years or something, like every 2 or 4 years to keep your pro badge.
That's the way it was. I think that's the way it's always been. It's like they check you about every 3 or 4 years. They check to see if you have to like or resubmit or something like that. So
I think the only thing that kept me alive was working with Carrie on the Tales from the Grave, the Bela Lugosi book we were doing at the time. But yeah, no, it's become where you have to jump through a lot of hoops. You have to end up paying a lot of money regardless, just to go out there, get a hotel room, and eat.
Yeah,
just too expensive anymore.
I mean, because it's for some people, you know, that's really now if you're trying to, you know, sell your book to producer or whatever, you know, that's really what you do. You have to get there, get into some of the after-hour parties, and try to, you know, mingle and you know, pitch your stuff. So
yeah, it really became Hollywood about 2009, 2008, 2009 when Hollywood just took over, and
not as much fun anymore.
No. I still remember the first year, like the first preview night they had, like it was that Wednesday evening they opened up. The floor was empty. I mean, we walked around we talked to whatever pros were there. We could shop every table. There was like nobody around. And by 2009, it was like another con day where it was like so packed. It was like shoulder to shoulder, like in the evening.
Yeah, see, they need to have a pro night.
Yeah.
It's just the pros get to water around in there.
Yeah.
But
Well, I told Keith that you guys have probably the next biggest show. Well, I mean, both of you guys have big shows, but Arizona, the Phoenix Fan Fest is a pretty good size show. And you guys get the ones in Texas that are pretty good size too. So yeah, so Keith, like once we get this thing, this book going, he may have to come out to Phoenix if he wants to meet me here, and then drive with me out there or whatever. But
Yeah.
go out to the Phoenix show.
oh yeah, I got lots of friends in Phoenix. We used to do our little Doc Savage convention there in Phoenix for a long time. Haven't done it in like 5 years, but we'd like to do it again.
But you guys it's scheduled for like May. Phoenix, isn't it this year?
I
thought it was like early summerish. Like
it's always been on, what is it, Memorial Day or whatever, that weekend, that 3-day weekend right there at the end of May.
Yeah.
Usually when it is.
I've been watching these things because I was like, oh my god, when they start, that's it. Well, that's the other downside is that having 2 Kickstarter books this year and stuff, but you can only sell so many online. It's like you really need to be tabling at a show or something.
Oh yeah, yeah.
But I'm hoping that everything pans out and the vaccine is good, and I get probably still have to wear masks and stuff like that, but just to be able to do it and get your book.
Yeah, I mean that was like I had my Kickstarter come out, and then I was like, I've been working. I'm almost done with the second issue, but I was like started on that. I had it written, and I started drawing it, and then COVID hit, and I was like 2020 was going to be my con year. Like I went to a show last year, and I was like, this next year I'm going to have a couple books. I'll be able to get a better table. Like I'm really I'll be able to push this thing, and then it's like, oh, it killed it. Like, so I'm just waiting. I've got it almost all ready to go. So when it.
Yeah, those in-person sales become really important.
They do.
Yeah.
I'm with you. Yeah, I was like, man, I got the books now.
Especially that was going to be my funding for because I do all the other work, but I have to hire a colorist and stuff like that, and everything. So that's the one thing that really hit me with doing the creator-owned stuff was like the lettering, because I was like, oh, I should be able to do this. It shouldn't be that bad or that hard to do lettering. Forget it, man. I'm terrible with any of the Adobe stuff anyways, but yeah.
Then just to have to try and do a word bubble and try to draw the stem and
right.
stuff. The fonts and stuff I get. I think that I'd be okay with it because as the writer, I know what I want to emphasize. I know what should be bolded, what shouldn't be, but just trying to do that and watching these videos of people that are like, oh, you do this page and then you have layers and you do this layer with this and then you do this.
Oh yeah.
Yeah,
I'm a big Illustrator guy, so layers are second nature to me now. That and Photoshop, working in layers. But
yeah. But that was like when I was learning, it was all a learning curve for me to put my book out, and I'd be like, how do you do this? I can't figure it out. And they don't sell manuals for these things anymore. It's all online. So I'm like, I don't have the manual. I don't know. And I was like, I'll just watch some YouTube videos. And then it's like at 45 minutes later, it's like, you're so boring to watch and you haven't told me what I need to know. You're like, or there's this convoluted way. And then some other guy has a 5-minute video that's like, you just hit these 2 keys and it does it all for you. And I'm like, what's this? Why did I just watch 45 minutes of nothing?
Yep. Exactly. It's better to have someone you can call.
Yeah.
You're my illustrator guru. What do I do to get this to happen?
Yeah.
And they'll usually go, oh, it's simple. You just do this. So, yep. You guys got big New Year's plans?
Yeah, this is it.
Good for me, at that age, where it's just that age and COVID, I guess, too, where you're stuck at home. So
Yeah.
it is what it is. But,
Yeah.
but yeah, I think Phoenix should be, if they come back, it's a really good show to do. You guys get a ton in Dallas because you guys get the Fan Expo, and then you guys get the other big. I can't think of the name of it. I think it's like another big corporate show. It's because there's Fan Expo, which is big, but then I thought you guys had like another.
Well, we got the Mark Walters Dallas comic book show.
Yeah, but I thought
But
there's
it's not on the same scale.
Yeah, no, I thought there was like another. I think you guys had like two really good sized ones that were Fan Expo, and I thought there was like another one that was kind of big like that.
Well, I think Fan Expo kind of supplanted the Dallas Comic Con, which was big, and that's where Mark used to work. And when that came through, Mark ended up splitting off and going back to his smaller show roots.
Yeah.
Which, of course, he hasn't had a show since COVID stuff came on. So
yeah, he came out here for last January. They had the show here. It was like their 10th anniversary or something. I think the showrunner here invited him out, but that was the last show I went to as an attendee was like last January. And then the show here is not that good. So
well, we did have the Dallas Fantasy Fair, a semi attempt at a revival of what used to be the big show in the Southwest.
Yeah. That was Nathan. That was the first show I went to with Keith, and I just sat at his table, but it was funny because the desks they had, and then Simon Bisley was there, and I've talked to Simon before. He knows me through Jimmy and stuff. And he always thinks like that he's supposed to do something for me, like a cover, I don't know what it is. He always thinks like there's something he's supposed to be doing for me. And he may not do it anymore, but he used to be like notorious for getting drunk at the night after the show or whatever, coming in the next morning and being kind of hungover or whatever. But it was funny because obviously he came unprepared. He was talking to me at Keith's table. And he's talking to Keith about the inks, I think. Inks, right? Or markers. And he's like, oh, shit, I forgot these. I'll give you $40 for these right now because I don't
I just bought a set of markers and I sold them for what I paid for them. I sold them to him. So,
yeah. And it's funny because he was at Pensacon when I was in Florida. And I went up there and I was talking to him, and he Pensacon has like the weirdest layout. They're in like a hockey rink type thing. So down, like the bleachers all come down and then all the vendors are down here, and Artist Alley goes around the top. So they're kind of spread out. And Bisley was at a table. He had a shared table with Bob Camp. And I walked up to talk to him, and Bisley's like blasting Led Zeppelin while he's drawing, and these kids are coming over and, talking to Bob Camp about Ren and Stimpy. And then they look over at Bisley's table, and he's got like a print with Lobo with Santa Claus's head like mounted on the wall. I'm sure the parents were like, don't look over here. Just stay with the Ren and Stimpy guy. But yeah, he was interesting. But I mean, that show was, I think like the date and stuff was hard for them, the way that they set it up. But the fantasy show had, Steranko was there and he had a line. I don't remember the guy's name, but the artist on Doctor Strange,
Frank Brunner.
Yeah, like I think he left because I didn't see him like after maybe halfway through the day.
Yeah.
Carrie never showed up. And then Steve was there. And then Ben from AP was there.
Yep.
Yeah. So,
Yeah. See, that's the thing. The guy who tried to put that show on didn't go back to the small show roots first. He just went to the big show, and it didn't work out for him well at all. So, because the nostalgia for the show was really a bunch of old guys like me who used to go all the time, and we just don't fill up the convention rosters as well as we used to.
yeah, I mean, if he brought in some of the newer, young, whatever, the more talent now, he may have had a good, better mix of a crowd. But I think if that's what he knows and that's what he likes, then that's why he stuck with, doing a show where it's, those creators that he likes. And I mean, if you're going to run a show, though, I guess, that's what you got to be weary of is, you can't just bring in people that you like. It's got to be a good mix of, current talent and stuff like that.
Very true.
Well, I mean, that's, when Matt did the expo here last year, I talked to him about bringing in talent and stuff on the comic side. Like, I think he did a good job of, he brought in the Mike Zeck, he brought in the Don Gregors, but then he also brought in the, Adam Kubert, and we brought in, Chris Boschelo, and we brought in, so I think he had like a good mix of that. I think he'll do better as he goes on with the shows. Like, he'll learn more as he goes. But I just think, you got to have that mix of talent like that. Because you could tell, like, when you're at the show, there's those people that are coming that, I mean, I know, like, with Carrie, I heard a bunch of people saying that, oh, I'm going to bring my Superman books. Oh, I'm going to do this because I don't ever see this guy. So I want to get this stuff signed now while I can, type of stuff. And,
the New Mexico show was good because we physically carried him to the show.
Yeah.
And he showed up.
Yeah, so Keith drove here with Carrie, so that's Carrie was coming.
Yeah. So Steve Irwin and I were his chaperones.
Yeah. So I don't think Nathan knows, but Keith worked on Space Jam, right?
Yeah.
Oh, okay.
I was doing some effects animation stuff. Every animation studio in America was working on that movie to help it reach its November deadline that year. So we had a lot of scenes we were doing. We were doing cleanup animation, and I was doing effects design. The way they were doing trying to make it look 3-dimensional with Michael Jordan.
Yeah.
To design these really nice shadows to go on it, and you had to draw them outside the character because then they would take that shadow layer and clip it into the character and blur it to give it that dimensional feel. Now they just do it in CG, but back then we were really pushing the envelope. So that was a lot of fun. Yeah, if you watch the thing all the way through, the very end, they were going through all the different studios. You'll get the Heart of Texas Studios, and it'll say effects supervisor Kez Wilson. So, yes.
Nice.
Keith's got all these claims to fame. Space Jam, he wrote a Batman story.
Power of the Atom.
Got a lot to aspire to here with get up there with Keith, man.
Yeah.
That's the one Kickstarter thing I'm hoping to do soon or someday is to repackage our Hammerlock and Scarlet properties.
Oh, you guys have the rights, yeah.
Yeah. So I'm glad to be the one to do that, though. I can't get anyone excited about it until I actually do something. So.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, that's the tough thing though. Like with Kickstarter is, I mean, I like it. I like the platform. I like being able to put the stuff out there. but it's just, building your audience, man. Especially now with those shows makes it so much harder.
Well, the good thing with Hammerlock though is we have Chris Sprouse as the artist, so people like Chris, so it works out. With some new color and some extra dialogue, possibly some new pages, we'll be doing good. So it'll be a big book.
No new Doc Savage stuff?
No. We got our ongoing fanzine thing. We're about to start work on the next issue, but otherwise, and I just did a calendar. Let me see, where's my copy of the calendar? Where I took all the guy who modeled for those Doc Savage covers. His name is Steve Holland, and he modeled for almost all the Doc Savage book covers. And I got a hold of a lot of the photo references they shot because he wore the ripped shirt and everything and did the stuff. So I ended up splicing him into the covers that he modeled for. So it's kind of weird. I'm trying to think, get something. Mark's frozen up.
Yeah, I see that.
Let's see. This is
nice.
This was the cover for our most recent Bronze Gazette, but that's Steve Holland posing for this cover for Quest of Quai or Quest of Qui or whatever you want to pronounce it. So I did a whole calendar of that kind of thing.
Oh, nice.
And this has a nice spot varnish.
Yeah.
Yeah. It came out really nice. So I'm not sure what I do with my calendar.
I'm in a pulp group on Facebook, and somebody had posted his photo shoot stuff, and I was going back online and looking through that a couple of weeks ago.
Right. There's a guy making a book of Steve Holland pose.
Yeah.
It's going to be interesting when that book finally comes out.
Yeah.
So.
We totally lost him.
Is he going to come back, or is this?
Oh, there he is.
Yeah, that was me, I guess. I don't know. It was weird. Like, everything stopped internet-wise, but the router wasn't, showing any problems.
Yeah, it's probably your provider.
It's going to be one of those 2000 glitches where everything's going to shut down at the...
Yeah.
Now,
do you have AT&T? No.
We do, but not for internet. We're limited here in New Mexico. There's only 2 internet providers.
That was the most recent cover we did. This is the model substituting for Doc Savage. I'd have to dig up the book to show you. So
is Doc Savage a public? No.
Not public domain. He is the original stories are in Canada because of the difference in Canadian copyright law. But Condé Nast has a nice stranglehold on the character. They're still holding out for a big time movie or something to help revive the character. But they just pulled in all the licenses for Anthony Tollin's reprints he was doing, and so all those the books aren't go out of print. I don't think they're letting them write any new ones. Will Murray was doing the new books, so nothing's happening on that front. Nobody's got a comic book license. It's too expensive. They want a lot of money, and they have no movie in the works. So
crazy. Is there still a big demand for that character?
Well,
because was it DC that tried doing has done Doc Savage books?
Yeah, they did it twice. They tried it twice.
Yeah. I remember J.G. Jones was on the artist on the second time, I think.
He did the covers.
Yeah.
And he actually wrote the last arc in it. And he actually did the best Doc Savage story.
Yeah.
Of the whole run. It was just a really wrong-minded. The editor didn't care about the character, and the writer, a lot of the writers and the artists, they played musical artists and stuff like that. And it was crazy. So we haven't seen anyone they haven't seen a really good Doc Savage strip since the Black and White magazine series back in the 70s.
Wow.
John Buscema and Tony DeZuniga, and some good stuff. It was closest to a feel of a real Doc Savage novel. So I think Millennium did a pretty good job too.
Yeah, I don't know like enough about the character, but I remember that DC did the second one.
Yeah, Denny O'Neil, the writer on the first time that DC did it, and he had some weird ideas about how to do the character, so it didn't quite go over that well.
Yeah, I didn't realize like how many like like this Zorro, right, is a public domain.
Yeah, I think Zorro's pretty much.
Or like now there's somebody else printing Conan besides Marvel.
Yeah.
But
they lost that's because Marvel lost the license to them, I think. Because the Howard estate or whatever still owns the Conan copyright or trademarks.
I
mean, the books themselves, it's kind of like the whole Sherlock Holmes thing, up to a certain point, all that's public domain. But once you get beyond that point, you can't use characters and circumstances that were written after that point. But anything up before that's fair game. So,
yeah, I talked to Roland Mann because he's a professor at Full Sail, so I got to know him, and then Daniel Corey, who wrote. They both did stuff with those public domain characters, like Roland did Wizard of Oz and something else. But Daniel's first book published through Image was Moriarty, and it was interesting to me to ask him. I was like, did you do a lot of research? Did you get a lot of feedback? People saying, well, that's not my Sherlock Holmes, or that's not my my Wizard of Oz characters. That wouldn't, because there's always those people that that wouldn't have happened, and I'm a lifelong whatever fan, and I know that Sherlock Holmes would never have done that type of thing.
Well, I know they'll get that from the Doc Savage people or Godzilla people or whatever. They're all very divisive. So.
Yeah, I mean, I know you're the Godzilla aficionado, but to me, like, Godzilla was, when I watched it as like a kid, it was those crappy black and white, movies where you could tell there was somebody in the costume, and back then it didn't matter, but now if you looked at it now, you could tell that's what it was. There was the weird cartoon with Godzuki.
Mm-hmm.
Where like they had a group of kids or whatever with them, and then there was Godzuki and Godzilla, and but I remember Godzuki also from that show, I don't know if it was the black and white show, but from like the show like that, and it always stuck with me. Like Godzilla would stomp on his tail for Godzuki to spit out fire or whatever to get him to do stuff.
That's Son of Godzilla.
Yeah.
In the late '60s. Not a great movie.
I remember the Godzuki had like that kind of cartoony face, like scaring anybody. But
his Japanese name is Minya. Godzuki was an invention of Hanna-Barbera when they did that. Yeah. So if you're looking for Minya, he's the one that's blowing the little
smoke circles or whatever. Yeah.
So.
Yeah, I wish like some of this stuff, like I wish like the Hanna-Barbera stuff was out there for public domain. Like I hate that DC just kind of don't really do anything with it, and when they do, they try to modernize it, stuff like that. I've twice now I've asked American Mythology if I could pitch an underdog story, and never get a response. But Like that stuff. Like I would love to write just because watching all those shows and growing up with that stuff.
See, that's the problem. It's just like with Doc Savage. It's a very niche market.
Yeah.
The fans like you are very small in number as far as what kind of profits they're going to realize out of the whole thing. So anyone who wants to see a really neat crossover between Space Ghost and the Herculoids and Frankenstein Jr., it's not going to happen.
No.
I'm sorry. Much as I'd like to see it happen.
So you need to let that go to public domain so that some of us that want to do it can.
Well, probably never will, but
Yeah.
way they're jockeying to keep everything in their corporate control. So it's like why Condé Nast was letting them reprint stuff and do new Doc Savage things, was to maintain the trademark and copyright on the character.
Oh, so as long as something, so kind of like the Watchmen deal, or as long as something is being put out every so many years or whatever.
Yes, exactly. So yeah, I have a great thing where I want to have Mighty Mightor and Space Ghost and the Herculoids and all those do a big crossover thing that was going to be a lot of fun. But it worked within as loose as they were within the reality of those cartoon shows. What I really wanted to do was the last story, the last Shazam story, the last Herculoid story, that kind of thing. Find out why they were hanging out on that planet, driving everybody away. So,
yeah, it's too bad because they don't think about that stuff, and it's just, I don't know, like, you just sit on that. Like DC just sits on that. Yeah, they did the Hong Kong Phooey Black Lightning crossover, but it's, I don't know. To the true Hanna-Barbera fans, it's not really, what you're looking for. You're looking for more of, what you got before.
Unless they did like the Black Lightning and the Super Friends art style.
Yeah.
And kept Hong Kong Phooey in his Hanna-Barbera art style.
Yeah. But I'm still, and I'll take it to my deathbed. Like I want to do this underdog story where it's, underdog and, the, what's her name?
Polly Pureheart?
Yes, Polly Pureheart gets taken. So it's kind of like, I envision it as like a Batman Hush type storyline where underdog goes, tries to find her, he gets his clue, it takes him to the first, arch enemy. And we go through because he has this huge cast of enemies that they never really touched on. You would see once or twice, you would see these people. It generally was the same, villains the majority of the time. But he's got this huge rogues gallery of people that, may have only seen one episode here, one episode there. But, I'd love to go through and he goes and, he runs into all these villains again as he tries to find her. And then, you come at the end and you find out that he dropped one of his pills one time and somebody picked it up and, was able to manufacture it so that now they're the equivalent of underdog, but, the bad version. So American mythology, if you're listening, I want to write this story.
At some point he's screaming, "What's in the box?" And Polly Purehead's head is in the box.
Yeah.
No.
But it's funny because I bet people that even watched Underdog wouldn't know that there's all these cast of characters. That there was a vampire, there was all these people that may have only seen air one time, and but it's part of his rogues gallery.
Yeah. Someday.
There's no love for Underdog. There's no love for the Hanna-Barbera.
No.
For all that stuff. It's too bad because that's.
Yeah, when they were doing the Cartoon Network comics, and they had some.
Yep.
Some of those, they had some of the Space Ghosts and Herculoids and things like that. But I think those just were kind of throwaways as far as they were concerned.
Yeah. Which is that's interesting maybe because there's not a ton of kids comics out there, that if you wanted to bring your kid into the reading and stuff comics, there's not a ton out there that's is G-rated. I know Scout is doing their Scoot line now, which is I guess aimed at younger readers, but
Yeah.
I'm going to say I'm probably going to have to sign off,
Sure.
but it's been fun chatting.
Yeah. Good. Yes, I've got an email for you guys maybe tomorrow or the next day of all this stuff that I thought up and tried to work through. So
Oh, excellent.
That'll be the next big thing we can actually say, yeah, down. That's going to be the next big thing.
that I don't know. I think it can do well. I don't know. It needs to. The story needs to be told now after it's got its own whole history of getting to this point. So yeah.
Very true. Very true. Yeah, the book about the creation of the book. That'll be the most interesting reading.
Yeah, make that the VH1 behind the music movie about it.
Right. And by then, Thomas Tenney will be willing to have do on-camera interviews just because he's not doing anything else.
We'll see. I wouldn't hold your breath on that one, but yeah. All right, gentlemen, we'll have a good, safe rest of your New Year's Eve.
Yep. Great seeing you guys.
You too.
Yeah.
All right, man. Have a good night.
Good night.
Good night.